Okay. Hello, welcome everyone to our webinar on leveraging an IRAP-hosted private content network. I appreciate your time today. Normally we do wait a few minutes for people to join if you're used to seeing us on here, but since we've only got about 30 minutes today, I want us to just go ahead and get going and get started on all the wonderful content that we have. For today's session, we will start by briefly discussing the rising security threats around sensitive data before outlining the agenda, and core topics we'll cover regarding IRAP validated offerings and how they enable unmatched security. Before we dive right in, I do want to take a moment to introduce our panelists to you. As you may know and can probably see from the picture right there, I'm Danielle, Director of Product Marketing Regulatory Compliance here at Kiteworks. My role is to be the global compliance expert and ensure that I communicate to our prospective customers and to our current customers that our private content network can support them in meeting regulatory requirements. Prior to joining Kiteworks, I had direct experience with regulatory compliance within the medical tech startup space and previously worked in insurance and software industries. But of course, the reason that we are here is for our spectacular guest, Sunil Saleh, CISO at MinterEllison, Australia's largest law firm, and our very own Rohan Dutt, Director of Industry Solutions. Gentlemen, I'd love if you could just take a quick moment and tell us about yourselves. Sunil, could you start us off?
Thank you, Danielle. Hi, everyone. I'm Sunil. I'm the Chief Security Officer at MinterEllison. As Danielle mentioned, we are one of the largest law firms in Australia. We are an international law firm. We are based out of Australia. We've got about 7 offices in Australia and 4 overseas. We have about 2,850 staff across the firm. And we have a dedicated security team. We have an extended virtual security team and a few large managed security services providers to cover our 24/7 security operations. And we also have a security assurance division, which helps in our security assurance activities such as user awareness, supply chain, and other activities. And yeah, we've been using Kiteworks for about 6.5 years now. And glad to join this discussion on regulatory compliance and how IRAP adds or makes a difference for MinterEllison. Rohan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. So good morning, everyone. I'm Rohan Dutt. I'm the Director of Industry Solutions for Kiteworks in Asia Pac. I'm Melbourne-based, and I've been with Kiteworks for a number of years, almost 10 now. And obviously, I've been pretty closely aligned with Sunil over his 6-year journey with Kiteworks and evolving kind of how we help him achieve a multitude of different cybersecurity factors in his organization: zero trust, data-centered compliance and risk mitigation, and a few of the different things that we'll talk about today, and including, not least of which was he was responsible for pushing Kiteworks to go down the IRAP assessment path a couple of years ago. So thank you for pushing us to get that done, Sunil. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, and thank you, gentlemen. Like I said, we've only got 30 minutes today to chat with you about IRAP and the benefits of an IRAP-assessed hosted private content network. So we're going to go ahead and start off high level at what is IRAP, and then we're going to dive into security by design and how that supports the IRAP program. Then we're going to narrow in specifically on MinterEllison to understand some of their previous pain points and solutions surrounding IRAP. Alrighty, so IRAP, the Information Security Registered Assessors Program. Say that 10 times fast. I know I sure have been practicing. IRAP is an Australian government initiative that provides a framework for assessing the security of cloud services. IRAP assessment helps organizations comply with government regulations as well as industry standards, such as the Australian Government Information Security Manual, or ISM, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS. So many acronyms in regulatory compliance. It's wonderful. It enables Australian government customers to validate that appropriate controls are in place when procuring and leveraging cloud services. So this program is designed to maximize the security of Australian government data by focusing on information and communications technology processes and communication. IRAP assessment is essential for organizations that are looking to work with the Australian government and to provide cloud services to government agencies. When a solution is assessed to IRAP protected level, this means that data governments governance classifications and protections have been confirmed to be in place, and that the respective technology is approved for use in the supply chain for Australian federal, state, and also local agencies, whether directly by government agencies themselves or by third parties that are communicating sensitive content with those agencies. Meaning that IRAP compliance is a crucial requirement for organizations aiming to offer cloud services to any Australian government entity. So now that I think we've heard more than enough from me. So Sunil, can you explain in more detail who needs to comply with IRAP and why?
Sure. Look, as you mentioned, IRAP is one of the IRAP mainly assists organizations against ISM and PSPF, or Protective Security Framework for Australian government agencies. Now, Australian government agencies have to comply with these two very rigorous and very comprehensive frameworks. These frameworks cover a lot of ground in terms of cybersecurity controls, processes, and practices. So when we look at an organization to have an IRAP, or when we start working with government agencies, naturally the first question the government agencies ask is, what sort of certification do we have? How do we make sure that the data we get from our government agencies is secure? So we have to establish the common ground to demonstrate compliance. When an organization goes through IRAP assessment, and Rohan will say it's not how intense it is or how comprehensive it is, and how detailed it is, but it's a very rigorous process, and it adds a lot of credibility to the organization. It helps us in the conversations we have with our clients, the government agencies, to set up the standard, to uplift the overall standard of a platform or a system. So it adds a lot of credibility to us. It adds a lot of credibility to Kiteworks as a solution. And from a regulatory compliance perspective, we as a law firm, we are a supplier to the government agencies because we manage their data, we receive data from our clients, so we are a supplier. So when a government agencies need to comply with IRAP, IRAP framework, or when we look at how the data is governed, we need to show compliance. We need to demonstrate compliance. So IRAP accreditation helps in demonstrating compliance. And overall, as we go through the IRAP program or the ISM and PSPF framework, as we go through the implementation, the overall risk management across the organization improves. The standard improves a lot, and yeah, because it's very intense, it's very comprehensive, and it's very thorough. It adds a lot of competitive advantage to organizations. So it also means, when I say a competitive advantage, it allows access to government contracts. So now all of a sudden, when you look at an organization that does not have IRAP accreditation versus an organization that has IRAP accreditation, naturally for government, it minimizes the barriers for us to win the government contracts. Apart from that, yeah, it's a great framework for us to refer to and to improve our overall risk management within the firm. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sunil. Love to hear about the competitive advantage as well. I think that that's something that gets glazed over quite a lot. So now that we know who needs IRAP assessment, Rohan, you understand the assessment process better than anyone that I ever could know, since you were just getting it done 2 years ago. Can you tell us what's involved?
I certainly can, and the slide is a reasonable depiction of kind of at a high level what is involved, right? So yes, we did ours 2 years ago, and we are actually right in the midst of doing a reassessment, because as it stands today in 2024, it's still a 2-year process. I anticipate that will change at some point and it'll become an annual process, but as it stands, it's 2 years, and we expect to have our second IRAP assessment, which actually covers a broader breadth of our offerings this time around. We expect to have that wrapped up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So what does this process look like? Well, first of all, as an organization, as a vendor, you've got to find somebody who's going to do the assessment for you. Now, these are independent certified personnel. There's a list of them available on the ASD webpage. If you go to cyber.gov and you search for IRAP, the program page has a listing of all of the people around Australia who can conduct an IRAP assessment for you, and there's probably 80 to 100 of them, so they're not that many. But once you've selected an assessor, the first thing they do is they give you a whole bunch of documentation to say, fill this out and tell me everything I need to know about what you are trying to have assessed. So that goes into now you guys or us as a vendor thinking about what the scope of this assessment is, right? Is it just the application that we provide and that we give to our customers, or does it include more elements, right? There are hosting elements, there are support elements, there are application elements. So defining a scope of what you want to have assessed is pretty important and can be quite a large gray spot. So it does take a lot of time to define what's going to be looked at between the assessor and ourselves. Included in this scoping process is actually the furnishing of information from, in our case, me, back to the assessor. And for those of you that have seen the ISM, there are 1,800, I think, odd controls in it that go all the way from the lowest classification all the way to top secret. So you quickly apply a couple of filters, you look at the protected level documents, the protected level controls, because that's what we want to assess to. And then you shake your head in misery because there's 917 of those, right? So it's non-trivial. It is very, very in depth, and it covers a whole range, as Sunil alluded to earlier. It covers a whole range of facets, all Kiteworks related. There are application related questions. There's encryption questions. There's secure development practices questions. There's all of these things. Oh, interesting anecdotally, there's 917 odd controls this year. 2 years ago, when we did our first one, it was only 700. So things have evolved. Certain controls from 2022 have now been split out into a number of different controls. So there have been some changes over the last couple of years. Anyway, be that as it may, we're talking about Kiteworks as an application, and we're talking about Kiteworks as a company. So part of the assessment is also what do our internal security practices and policies look like? What do our internal frameworks for HR look like? What do our internal frameworks for training and cybersecurity awareness look like? More specifically within scope, what do our technical services staff go through in terms of training, in terms of onboarding? What do the authorizations look like? There's a whole range of these controls that we have to, that I have to give to the assessor. And then they spend however long they need to spend reviewing the ISM and all my responses to it. And then comes the possibly the next biggest piece of it, which is show me evidence to back up everything you've claimed in these 917 controls. Now, I don't have to provide 917 pieces of evidence, but there are a few hundred that the assessors generally want to see, and it's going to be a combination of, show me proof that you have a business continuity program and documentation in place that is assessed annually and all of these things. It also asks for things like, show me proof that you've got double encryption on your storage layer in Kiteworks. Right? So there's a number of different things that we have to prove to the assessor. Once all of that is done, we get a report, a very detailed report from the assessor, highlighting the entire findings of the assessment across these 917 controls. Part of that report is going to necessarily be, when you think about a vendor and 917 controls, there are necessarily going to be places where you don't necessarily meet the control or meet the construct of what is put in the ISM. And so is there a mitigating control for something that you don't necessarily adhere to as per the ISM requirement, right? So there's this whole recommendations and remediations piece of the report, right? So you've got all this information. Here's how you fix it. If you can't fix it, what are you doing to control against the risks associated with that particular let's call it flaw, for lack of a better term. So look, it is a very, very involved process. It took us about 6 months the first time around. It's going to take us a little bit longer this year because we are looking at including some other products, Kiteworks platforms into our platform for the assessment. And it is very expensive. So it's not something that, in my opinion, it's not something that anybody can jump into with both feet. And in my opinion, it does demonstrate a serious inclination from a vendor perspective. It demonstrates a serious inclination to take the market seriously, to take the regulatory and compliance environment that we're currently in. And I can see where we're moving to because I have eyes on the US market, and we tend to be about 2, 3, maybe 4 years behind them. And so it demonstrates a number of different things, not least of which is the vendor's commitment to security and commitment to be compliant within the market.
Oh my God, my mind is still reeling with the over 900 controls. You know, as an American here, everything we're talking about right now is CMMC. And if you want to have a contract with the Department of Defense, with the DoD, there's 110 controls. I hear 900 plus, and wow, I don't know if y'all are 3 or 4 years behind. I don't think so. I think that Australia is definitely leading the charge on that.
I think those are the compare and contrast between the stuff that we do as a company for the US market, as opposed to what we do here, as opposed to what we do in Europe. Probably a webinar all onto its own, Danielle.
A series of webinars, I
Or
think,
maybe
perhaps.
so, yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Maybe
So,
so.
you know, we kind of touched on it already, Rohan, with, you know, why is this critical? Why is this so important? And I mean, obviously, yes, there's 900 plus controls, so you've got to make sure that you're meeting all of these. But, you know, if you look here on the slide, you know, according to IBM, the cost of a data breach report that they recently came out with in 2023, the average just global cost of a data breach reached $4.5 million, and that's average. And so when you're taking a look at that, that is a 15% increase over the past 3 years. These things are just getting more expensive. They're getting more complicated. So it's so imperative that organizations are implementing the most stringent protections around sensitive client and government information, as well as intellectual property, not only just so that they can meet these 900 plus controls, but so that they're not constantly being attacked and compromised. IRAP certified solutions indicate the highest level of security, and they have been independently validated to harden defenses against both external attack vectors as well as insider risks. So implementing these types of validated platforms you know, also enables just smoother adherence to key regulatory mandates that can otherwise incur hefty penalties if violated. And if anyone has seen any of our other webinars, specifically around data sovereignty that we did, I think back in December, there's a lot of fines that go around with a lot of different regulatory bodies, and making sure that those are being adhered to. Now that we've gone over the IRAP program, I'd really love to focus more on where security by design and data management can come in seamlessly to support multiple layers of compliance, as well as the IRAP program itself. Sunil, I'd love to know what security by design solutions mean, not only in regards to IRAP, of course, but what it should mean to all CISOs.
So security by design is a concept which means there is a lot of thinking that has gone behind the design of the product itself, and that is baked into or embedded within the in the development cycle itself, rather than an afterthought. In other words, it means there are a lot of controls that we don't have to then patch onto the solution once it's deployed into production. For example, on the screen we can see zero trust principles, DRM, encryption, secure communication channels, or audit log. These are all core components of a solution. So when we look at managing sensitive data, processing or storing sensitive data, we look at how do we manage that, the entire digital life cycle, right? Data life cycle. So we got to look into that. So adding these controls on the top, it involves integrating other components from external to that system, which means there are more things to fail. So security by design concept is it adds a lot of value to to products, and it also means there is less operations overhead for IT security team, and particularly calling out the zero trust and encryption and DRM. Last few years, particularly last year, we've seen a number of breaches in Australia. So I think DRM and encryption will play a key role in the coming years, and DRM particularly will play a key role, mainly because DRM helps the control to travel with the data. So even if there is a data breach, which is a question of when, if, not if. So when there is a data breach, DRM gives an additional lever for us to manage the damage radius and to minimize the risk of compromise. So data will get out, but still we have that last bit of control when the data does get out. And audit logs is absolutely crucial for us to draw or to weave a story of what actually happened when there is a breach, what actually happened, how did the breach occur, and to learn from that particular breach. So yeah, security by design. When you look at the IRAP principles, the ISM and PSPA framework, security by design, any product that embeds these controls will definitely help with the IRAP program as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and, oh, we've only got 10 minutes, so I'll talk even faster than I have been. We can go ahead and take a quick look first at Zero Trust. So the Zero Trust security model is based on the principle of verified explicit authorization rather than implicit trust. This manifests through granular least privilege permission policies, multi-factor authentication across all or multiple access channels, real-time analytics monitoring for abnormal user activity indicative of credential misuse, and content-defined zero trust. Content-defined zero trust is where no device, no user, no agent is implicitly trusted with access to system resources. A content-defined zero trust approach extends this model to the content layer versus just the network and application layers. Content-defined zero trust involves several key elements, and these features that you see here on the screen in front of you together do deliver airtight protection and visibility across the board. Sunil, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about what do you see as some of the strongest zero trust content security tools?
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of tools, so the zero trust approach itself, it's more of a journey rather than a particular technology. So when we look at implementing zero trust, it delivers a whole bunch of benefits to an organization. Be it cyber hygiene, getting to better understand our users, better understand our user behaviors, our endpoints, and more importantly, we get analytics and stats about which user is accessing what particular content. And based on that, our focus shifts from protecting the network or a particular device to protecting the data or the content. So the zero trust content security it changes the entire focus for security teams rather than look at the traditional way of building a firewall and protecting sort of the network to protecting the data and building controls outwards. So in other words, the zero trust focus on content or the zero trust journey itself will help in minimize the damage radius.
Thank you. Thank you. It sounds very much like trust, but verify. So
Yes. Continuous
which
trust
I
and
like.
continuous validation. Yep.
I absolutely love that. And that actually does move us pretty well into DRM. So legacy DRM systems that rely oh gosh, I apologize. I think that yep, there we go. I know I went too far. That do rely on static permission have proven vulnerable to growing insider leaks. Rohan, I'd really love if you could expand on some modern solutions.
Yeah, I think the trust but verify piece is super important. But and over the last maybe 5 or so years, we've looked at trust but verify zero trust principles in general as prove who you are and then get access to systems. Prove who you are, get access to networks, and that's been great. And companies should absolutely look at that as a strategy. But largely, we've ignored the content layer, right? So if you think about this in the most simple terms, your balance sheets should not be visible necessarily to your marketing folks. To pull a completely random example out of thin air, right? So certain content or all kinds of content need to be protected in certain ways. This is what we call content-defined zero trust, not network-defined zero trust, not application-defined zero trust. All of those are important, as I said. Content-defined zero trust is where the world is going. Gartner has said it last year in their report. And we think that this is incredibly crucial for the world. A completely independent and unbiased CISO who happens to be on the webinar with us has also said the exact same thing. Yeah. So what does digital rights management look like, right? So DRM specifically or particularly speaking generally comprises of 3 different elements, right? There's an authorization piece, who can access it. There's an authentication piece, prove who you are and then get access to the data. And then there's some level of protection piece, right? There'll be an encryption, there'll be some key management involved. There might be some, prevent forwarding, all of those things. That's what we know. That's what we don't necessarily love today because it is virtually unworkable in the real world. But there's a huge problem with this fundamentally, and there's a whole talking point around this, which I'm not going to get into because we've only got 6 minutes. But the fundamental problem is that when I encrypt something and I put protections on it and I give it to somebody else in the hope that it is going to remain protected, ultimately that somebody else needs to deprotect it in order to work with it. Otherwise, the document remains inaccessible. That is the nature of encryption. So what have we done? We've put all these protections around data, and then we've given somebody the keys to open it up and get access to the raw data. And yes, ordinarily this is great, and you have trusted partners that you do this with, and everything's in place, and policies are in place, and all of these things. But when you look at insider threats, when you look at bad actors, when you look at spoofing, when you look at credential theft, and so on and so forth, you've lost it, right? Your most sensitive bits of information are out in the wild in some unapproved user's hands. This is the problem with current generation digital rights management, is that you lose control of your data once it's outside your boundaries.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you. I'm definitely hearing from you both that strong data protection is going to be more than just file level controls. It's really going to be across communication channels as well. And, Rohan, moving on to our next slide, I'd really like if you could expand on integrated risk management for us just a little bit.
So again, this is a huge topic, right? But basically, we touched on it a little bit earlier. You've got zero trust around network access, application access, and now we're talking about data access as a very core part of communicating or securing your communications, right? So what does that mean? Defense extending across channels, any number of organizations transfer information any number of different ways. Do you have uniform security practices across all of those ways? Are you encrypting your data where it needs to be encrypted, regardless of whether it's an MFT process that's moving data or whether your users are using email, right? So there's a whole number of questions here that need to be answered. And then in terms of all the other things, double encryption. Today's day and age, volume level encryption is not good enough because volumes need to be decrypted to work. So what are the files that are being stored in your volume? What are they doing when your volume is decrypted, right? Are you individually encrypting your files? Is it true data at rest? And so on and so forth. So the securing communication channels is super important, but it's not just the communication channels that need to be secured, obviously secure protocols, etc. But it's also all of how you treat the data within and outside of your network.
Thank you, Rohan. I know we've only got 3 minutes, but let's just go ahead and real quickly wrap up security by design features with our audit log to understand how comprehensive activity tracking provides really just airtight compliance of regulations. And I'd love if we could actually just walk through some features of the Kiteworks audit logs as an example. Rohan, do you think you could fill us in on some features within the Kiteworks audit logs?
Yeah, sure. And again, I'll keep this brief because I think we want to hear from Sunil right at the end. But look, the audit log is everything, as Sunil mentioned maybe 5 minutes ago or something like that. An audit log, an event log where you can correlate activities across different happenings within your organization is key to real-time monitoring. Where's your information going? Understanding where your data is actually going in the world in order to provide detailed reporting, right? Who's doing what and why or who's doing what and when they're doing this. And then, if push really came to shove and you're in the midst of a forensic discovery experiment or a forensic discovery activity because you're doing cyber response, being able to patch your story together to form a cohesive story of where your data is going, how it's being used, etc., is incredibly important. And speed to get that information is the single most important factor in cyber response. So when you look at all of the vendors, not all of the vendors, but if we look at some of the vendors that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis, you could have issues like, throttling for logs, right? Unless you're paying a premium for log retention, you'll get as many logs as your storage will allow you to have. And then you may have to wait 72 hours before you can get those logs back to you for your cyber response. So key things to have the entire picture of where your data went and how it went, to have that in absolute real time so that you can respond right away, and to have that for other things like reporting, understanding where your information is going so that you can better defend.
Thank you, Rohan. Let's go ahead and I'd love to hear from Sunil. Can you share some of the pain points that MinterEllison experienced surrounding IRAP specifically?
Sure. Yeah. I'll go over it very quickly. So in terms of we get a lot of data from our clients in terms of e-discovery or even as part of providing legal advice. Now we were looking for a platform to have this large file exchange platform has to be secure, has to have very granular data management capabilities, and it should be dead easy to use from a user perspective and also from an admin perspective. From a user perspective, mainly because it has to be as easy as Gmail, using Gmail on an iPhone. There's no separate training for those. So that's where we selected Kiteworks, because it made a big difference from a user and security perspective. Now, that is just one part of the equation. When we go to clients, it's just not about me saying, oh, trust us, it's secure. We have to demonstrate compliance. And that's where IRAP made a big role. And that's why we were pushing Kiteworks to get through IRAP certification. Even though it took 6 months, it was quite intense. And we had a lot of phone calls with Rohan, me, and Kieran. But yeah, IRAP has made a big difference. Now, we did work with a couple of our big government clients, and IRAP was immediately seen as a big advantage for us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everyone, I know that we're already at our minute, but I'd love to just take one more minute, Sunil, if you wouldn't mind, because I'd love to hear a little bit more about, now that you've secured sensitive content at the stages, different stages of the transactions, what do you feel is possible for MinterEllison as far as potential contracts over the next 5 years? And then I swear I'm going to let everyone go.
Look, I think 5 years is a long time to predict or to guess something. But I'd say for the next couple of years, with Kiteworks and the features that's coming up, with the points that Rohan mentioned, the DRM and other encryption features, I think we are in a good position to address some of the challenges that we are seeing in this space. From a regulatory perspective, there are a lot of changes being proposed. In the last couple of years, we have seen a massive breaches in Australia. So there is a lot of regulatory changes happening. Clients they're coming up with new requirements, which is completely understandable. There is a new way of they're looking at new ways to exchange data. There's a new way to communicate and collaborate with clients. We are seeing a lot of changes in the market, in the industry right now, and how we collaborate with our clients. Apart from that, the big ticket items, we are working in a security program. Zero trust principles, we are already on this path. Then there is data sprawl. That is a big ticket item for us. We have a dedicated data governance team. We work alongside the data governance team. We look at protecting and minimizing exposure, whereas data governance team looks at the entire life cycle of the data. Then we have cloud transformation. There is a lot of work going on in compliance and assurance. As clients' requirements are changing, there is a lot of regulatory changes that our clients have to go through. We are helping our clients, and we look at that as a driver. There's a lot of things happening. The security program, we go through 1 to 2 audits every month. Apart from that, 2 other things I'd like to highlight is automation. Automation is a massive, massive thing for us. We have already automated a lot of process and workflows. We are seeing benefits, and we are looking to automate more workflows and processes. Lastly, AI. Everyone's talking about AI. Now, we are truly in the AI arms race. Every organization that we know of, we hear about, if we scan the news in the last few days or last few months, everyone is talking about AI. So we are truly in the AI arms race. At Minters as well, we have adopted AI, or we have a lot of initiatives driven top down on AI. And there's a lot of AI lighthouse principles. There's guidelines. There's risk management on AI. So it is taken quite seriously within the firm. And from a cybersecurity perspective as well, there's a lot of, because of the AI consumerization and ease of access to AI, we are seeing a lot of AI-powered attacks. So whether we like it or not, as cyber defenders, whether we like it or not, whether we think AI is high risk or low risk, we are invested. So I like to close off saying, any discussion we have with our partners, suppliers, or with the community, we ask a question, especially with our partners and suppliers, saying, what can we do with AI? What opportunities and capabilities does it provide to us? And more importantly, what opportunities are we missing, right? That's about it.
Thank you, Sunil. I love that. And thank you so much for mentioning AI. There's so many new regulations around AI that are coming out and being talked about, and it's such a hot topic. It's interesting. Everyone, I know that we're just a little bit over, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Sunil and Rohan, for sharing your expertise and really making time to educate us and shed some light on IRAP, over 900 controls. Wow. Have a wonderful morning in Australia and a fabulous evening out in the States. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Bye-bye.